Eli Cannon. I'm the art director of World of Warcraft. I'm here today along with some of my co-developers. At the time, we were all level designers, and we want to talk to you about creating the world of Northrend for Wrath of the Lich King.
I am Sarah Bullion-Barrel, and I'm currently one of the lead level designers on the World of Warcraft team. Back when we were creating Northrend, I was a senior level designer.
I'm Aaron Keller. I'm the game director of Overwatch, and for Wrath of the Lich King, I was one of 2 lead level designers on the project.
So Northrend is one of the most infamous locations of all of Azeroth. That's something that we have had in our lore since the beginning. It was one of the main settings for the RTS game, and it spawned some really amazing characters like Arthas. Building his world, building the place that so much of his history took place in was a really exciting opportunity for us. And of course, it's someplace we knew we always wanted to come back to, and Wrath of the Lich King was the perfect time to do that.
A level designer on World of Warcraft is actually a little bit different than it is in most of the game industry. We are a true hybrid between art and design.
Level designers have a totally different set of responsibilities from project to project. On Overwatch, a level designer is responsible for all of the initial geometry. For the WoW team, the level designers are responsible for designing and building the whole world.
One of the core tenets of creating World of Warcraft is thinking about gameplay and thinking about the player. For a level designer, that really does translate back into how does the player interact with the world? And one of the main ways you're doing that is navigating it, right? Moving around in the world.
So we start with working with the art teams to come up with the biomes and ideas of what the visual language of the world's going to be. And then on the design side, we think about the spacing, the layouts, the way the gameplay will flow through the spaces.
Where are all the roads leading people to? They design all of that, and then they actually build it.
So we start with a 2D map laying out on paper what the landscape is going to look like from a really high-level perspective. Then we get up into the editor and we start our rough 3D, which is where we're blocking in the spaces.
So when we're concepting a zone, it's really great to have one image that really defines what the zone is, and it'll handle a lot of things. It'll handle the mood, and it'll handle the color palettes of the zone. All of those sorts of elements would be represented in this postcard image, and we call it a postcard because it's kind of like what you would buy at a convenience store and send back home as like a representation of the most ideal version of this place.
With Northrend, we wanted players to experience this land, this whole continent that felt larger than life.
Northrend presented a bunch of new opportunities and challenges for us. We'd worked, of course, on Burning Crusade before this and the original release of World of Warcraft. And when we got into Northrend, we really tried to evolve the way that we were thinking about world design and the way that we were thinking about large elements in the world.
We knew we were going somewhere in the north, right? And that was a really important aspect of it. And so a couple of us on the team, myself as well as Eli Cannon, had lived in the Pacific Northwest.
The beautiful mountainscapes, the snow-packed peaks, even the evergreen forests of Washington and the Olympic Forest there, all of these things really played into inspiring us when we were thinking about building out Northrend.
Building a massive continent like this is a huge amount of work.
Everything that at that time was hand-drawn because we didn't have the height map-based texture blending technology that we have today.
At this time, there was no measurement tool. We were trying to measure how high things were. And so what we ended up doing as a level design team is we would bring pirate ships in to the editor, and we would stack them on top of each other. And so the pirate ship sort of became like our yardstick for how tall things were in the game. So it's like, oh, this cliff is 2.5 pirate ships tall. So then we would know like what the difference is and how to manage something like that going forward.
We spent, I think, 3 or 4 months just playing with the editor and pushing it and just trying to figure out what could we get out of the tools that we had that we hadn't sort of tapped fully previously. One of those things was the copy-paste tool. So we found a lot of success using copy-paste tool in Outland, but we used it to an entirely different level in Northrend, and ultimately allowed us to put things together like Ice Crown Glacier in a very small amount of time and still have it look very refined and very hyper-detailed in a way that we wouldn't have been able to achieve before.
So Grizzly Hills was this fantastical redwood forest with, trees with massive girth and excessive height and a place that you could really get lost into. one of the level designers really wanted to make villages throughout this forest that would have been maybe built from the trees. And then we had this race, we call them the trappers. So this level designer said, I've got a log. I bet I could make log cabins for them. And so he took a single log prop, and by scaling it and duplicating it, he built bridges, fences, entire ecosystem for this one very minor race at the time. And it was amazing.
Another really interesting zone that we created for Northrend was Borean Tundra. It was an extremely unique challenge for the team in that we had to blend a bunch of very disparate colors together. We had a really bright yellow and red palette, and we had something that was almost a sage green color. To do this, we created what we call a brain technique, and it's basically a repeating pattern on the ground that you don't see unless you're over the top of it. But it gives you a sense of gradation of color and changes in the texture of a large flat ground plane, which is exactly what Borean Tundra was. It was just a big open, vast tundra space. Didn't have a lot of trees, didn't have a lot of bushes, so it was really important to try to create something very interesting visually to look at as you were looking across this big, vast open space. And we did it with color.
So when we were designing Howling Fjord, we knew that this was going to be the drop-off location for Alliance players. And we really wanted them to sail through this narrow, impossibly tall cavern through this fjord. These boats are really big. And so to just get one to be able to turn around and go back the other direction took so much space.
Someone had an idea of what if we do like a sea cave tunnel that the ship can go into so we can come in at the correct radius and then go back down the canyon. That was a fun challenge because it was at ocean level and had to be filled with water, and it was an interior water, which is different from the exterior water.
They were two separate pieces of water. We had to put a small rim of rocks between the inside and the outside so that you couldn't see where the two bits of water came together. It looked kind of funny when the boat is going through it, but it was like a huge technical challenge and the first time we'd ever done anything like that.
So in Sholazar Basin, I have kind of a personal story. During development of that, I got engaged and my fiance had some issue with my ring. And so I was talking about it with the quest designers working on the zone, and they got inspired by this story and decided they wanted to put us and a little bit of our story into the zone. And so his name's Chad, and he has a quest that you can get where you have to find the ring that he lost, and it's somewhere in Sholazar Basin. I'm the innkeeper, and so it's a fun little story, and I think you actually get a ring as well as for part of your quest reward there.
It was one of my career highlights to be able to build this really expansive environment with all of the different zones that we created. And it wasn't just what we made, but it was all the people that we did it with. It was all the ideas of everybody on the team that really made Wrath like such a cool expansion.
The Wrath of the Lich King expansion is still one of my favorite expansions. It really has impacted my life in such a positive way. I'm still working on the game, right? Like I've stayed here all these years because I still love making World of Warcraft.
This is one of our favorite expansions.
I cannot wait for players to re-experience Northrend.
I'm really looking forward to Wrath Classic launching later this year.
I'm so excited for all of you to get to revisit and come back to Northrend with us.